We're in session and calls number 328-324. The case is Solid State of Texas versus Curtis Lee Woods. Mr. Woods, would you please raise your right hand? Mr. Woods, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Okay.
Mr. Woods, you may put your hand down. Mr. Woods, how are you doing?
I'm fine, yourself.
I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking. Mr. Woods, you're here with your attorney, Mr. John West. Mr. West, how are you doing?
Good, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. West, do you waive a record in this case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Woods, the information in this case alleges that on or about September 26th of 2020, while you were in Jefferson County, Texas, operating a motor vehicle, that you committed the Class A misdemeanor offense of driving while intoxicated with an alcohol concentration level of 0.15 or more. Mr. Woods, do you understand what you've been charged with?
I do.
And to this charge, how do you plead? Guilty, not guilty, or no contest?
Guilty.
Now, are you pleading guilty freely and voluntarily?
Yes.
And Mr. Woods, are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
Mr. Woods, I have before me a document that is titled the Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Right of, the document that I have before me now is the misdemeanor plea admonishments and is also labeled as State Exhibit Number 1. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, sir.
And on page 2 of this same document, Mr. Woods, are these your initials on the line next to a box, check guilty?
Yes.
And on page 3 of this document, Mr. Woods, there's a signature above the line that's titled Defendant. Is this your signature?
Yes.
And the next document that I have before me is titled Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Right of Appeal. Mr. Woods, do you recognize this document?
Yes.
And is this your signature above the line that's titled Defendant?
It is.
There are 2 boxes that are checked at the top of this document. The first box that's checked states that this is a plea bargain case and you have no right of appeal. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
The second box states that you are waiving, which means you're giving up your right to an appeal. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Woods, I also have before me a document that is titled the Discovery Certification. Mr. Woods, do you recognize this document?
Yes, sir, I do.
And is this your signature above the line that's titled Defendant?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Woods, prior to signing and initialing these documents that I've just mentioned, did your attorney go over these documents with you?
Yes, we did.
And did you read and understand everything in these documents?
Yes, we did.
And is everything in these documents true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, sir.
State, I have before me State's Exhibit Number 1. State, would you like to offer State's Exhibit Number 1?
Yes, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objections. State's Exhibit Number 1 will be admitted. Mr. West, you've advised and counsel Mr. Woods. Is there any evidence that he is currently mentally incompetent to stand trial?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Woods, your attorney, Mr. West has advised and counseled you. Are you satisfied with his representation?
I am, sir.
Has he provided full, effective, and competent legal representation?
He did.
Mr. Woods, I will accept your plea of guilty. I will find that you are mentally competent to stand trial. I will also find that your plea of guilty and waivers were freely and voluntarily given. I will also find that there is sufficient evidence to find you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. State, do we have a plea bargain agreement?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what is that agreement?
The agreement is for 180 days, probated over 18 months, a $1,000 fine, 80 hours community service, DWI education, drug and alcohol assessment, victims impact panel, and interlock device.
Mr. Woods, the state is offering that you serve 180 days in the Jefferson County Jail. However, you would not have to serve any time in the Jefferson County Jail because you'll be placed on probation for 18 months. During the 18-month probationary period, you'll be required to pay a fine of $1,000 and court costs of $422. The total fine and court cost is $1,422. You'll also be required to pay a probation fee of $60 each month, a urinalysis fee of $15 each month. You will be required to pay the Jefferson County DWI education class and initial evaluation fee of $125 on the day of the plea. Should a further evaluation be needed, you'll be required to pay an additional $50. Now, your total monthly installments that you'll be required to pay for this case is $175 each month. Mr. Woods, will you be able to pay the $175 each month?
I will.
Mr. Woods, you will also be required to perform 80 hours of community service, attend a DWI education class, and you will be required to have a drug and alcohol assessment. You will attend and complete the victim's impact panel, and you will install a DWI or interlock device on any vehicle that you own or operate. You will also have to adhere to the other standard terms and conditions of probation. Did I mention that you would also be required to perform 80 hours of community service?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Woods, do you understand the state's offer?
I do.
Do you think that the state's offer in your case is fair and just?
I do.
And do you accept the state's offer?
I do.
Okay, Mr. Woods, I'll follow the plea bargain agreement that you have entered into with the state. Mr. Woods, you're gonna stand on the X next to your attorney. You're gonna follow the directions of our clerk. And once you finish following her directions, you'll be free to go. And you have a blessed day.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Oh, okay. Yeah, I signed it. Yeah.
You get it.
There's a signature pad right here. You will sign. You won't see it, but I will. Mr. West. Raise your right hand for me. Do you swear you've never been convicted or given deferred adjudication or regular probation for a misdemeanor or felony and this or any other thing? Do you have any other charges pending against you? Once you leave here, you are to report directly to probation.
We're in session and cause number 328-136. The case is styled as State of Texas versus Jacqueline Gutierrez. Ms. Gutierrez, would you please come forward? Ms. Gutierrez, would you please raise your right hand? Ms. Gutierrez, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Thank you.
You may put your hand down. How you doing, Ms. Gutierrez?
I'm doing nice, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thanks for asking. Ms. Gutierrez, I have before me an information that alleges that on or about May 29th of 2020, while you were in Jefferson County, Texas, that you committed the Class B misdemeanor offense of accident involving damage to a vehicle. Do you understand what you've been charged with?
Yes, sir.
And to this charge, Ms. Gutierrez, how do you plead? Guilty, not guilty, or no contest?
Guilty.
Now, Ms. Gutierrez, are you pleading guilty freely and voluntarily?
Correct. Correct, yes, sir.
And are you pleading guilty because you're guilty? You have to speak up.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, okay, now, Ms. Gutierrez, we're waiving a record in this case. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, Ms. Gutierrez, I also have before me a document that is titled to misdemeanor plea admonishments. Also labeled as State's Exhibit number 1. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, sir.
On page 2 of this same document, Ms. Gutierrez, there are 2 sets of initials on this document. The first set of initials is on a line that's titled, next to a box that's titled guilty. Are these your initials?
Yes, sir.
The next set of initials is below a paragraph that is titled discovery and is on a line next to a statement that reads as follows. I do not request discovery of the evidence. I waive my right to request discovery in the case and choose to enter a plea of guilty or no contest. Are these your initials on this document?
Correct, yes, sir.
Now, on page 3 of this same document, Ms. Gutierrez, there's a signature above the line that's titled guilty. Is that your signature?
Yes, sir.
And the next document, Mr. Gutierrez, is titled the Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Right of Appeal. Ms. Gutierrez, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
Is that your signature on the line that's titled guilty?
Correct.
And there are 2 boxes that are checked at the top of this document. The first box that's checked states that this is a plea bargain case and you have no right of appeal. Do you understand that?
Correct.
And the second box states that you're waiving your right to an appeal, which means you're giving up your right to an appeal. Do you understand that? Now, Ms. Gutierrez, I have 2 other documents before me. First document that I have is titled Judge's Explanations of Defendant's Right of Appeal. Ms. Gutierrez, do you recognize this document?
Yes, sir.
And is this your signature on the line that's titled guilty? I mean, that's titled defendant.
Yes, sir.
There's a set of initials at the bottom of this document. And the set of initials is next to a statement that states, I want to waive my right to attorney and represent myself. Are these your initials?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Gutierrez, I have another document before me that is titled Waiver of Counsel for Purposes of Entering a Guilty Plea or Proceeding to Trial. Ms. Gutierrez, do you recognize this document?
Yes, sir.
And is this your signature above the line that's titled Defendant?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Gutierrez. Prior to signing and initialing all of these documents that I've just mentioned, did you have an opportunity to read the documents?
Yes, sir.
And did you understand what you read?
Yes, sir.
And is everything in these documents true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, sir.
Now, Ms. Gutierrez, are you a U.S. citizen?
Yes, I am.
State, I have before me State's Exhibit number 1. State, you like to offer State's Exhibit number 1?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Gutierrez, I have before me State's Exhibit number 1. State's Exhibit number 1 is the misdemeanor plea admonishment. The state would like to use this document as evidence against you in this case. Now, State's Exhibit No. 1 is the document that have your initials on page 2 and your signature on page 3. Is it all right for the state to use this document as evidence in your case?
Yes, sir.
Okay, no objection. State's Exhibit No. 1 will be admitted. Ms. Gutierrez, is there any evidence that you are currently mentally incompetent to stand trial?
No, sir.
Ms. Gutierrez, I will accept your plea of guilty. I will find that you are mentally competent to stand trial. I will also find that your plea of guilty and waivers were freely and voluntarily given, and I will also find that there is sufficient evidence to find you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. State, do we have a plea bargain agreement?
Yes, Your Honor.
What is that agreement?
It's a 1-year deferred adjudicated probation, a $500 fine, and 40 hours community service.
Okay. Ms. Gutierrez, the state is offering that you serve a 1-year deferred adjudicated probation. During the 1-year probationary period, you'll be required to pay a fine of $500 and court costs of $292. The total fine and court cost is $792. You will be required to pay probation fees in the amount of $60 each month, a urinalysis fee in the amount of $15 each month, and your total monthly installments will be $150 a month. Ms. Gutierrez, will you be able to pay the total monthly installments of $150 each month?
Yes, sir.
You will? Ms. Gutierrez, you will be required to perform 40 hours of community service, and you would have to adhere to the other standard terms and conditions of this probation. Ms. Gutierrez, do you understand the state's offer?
Yes, sir.
Do you think that the state's offer in your case is fair and just?
Yes.
And do you accept the state's offer?
Yes, I accept.
Ms. Gutierrez, I'll follow the plea bargain agreement that you've entered into with the state. We're going to defer a finding with guilt, place you on probation for 1 year, assess a fine of $500 plus court costs of $292, and you'll be required to serve 40 hours of community service as well as adhere to the other standard terms and conditions of probation. Now, Ms. Gutierrez, if you successfully complete this deferred probationary period, this case will be dismissed. It will not appear on your record as a conviction, and you may qualify for a non-disclosure. And you can talk to an attorney about how to apply for a non-disclosure. Ms. Gutierrez, please stand on the X to your left. You're going to follow the directions of our clerk. Once you finish following those directions, you'll be free to go, and you have a blessed day. Thank you.
Mr. Gutierrez, can I get your right thumbprint?